Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today I have a really exciting end of year book haul to share with you guys. Just really quickly though, before we get into it, I did not mean to go MIA, but between work and some recent travel, I did not schedule my videos as well as I probably should have. So unfortunately for you now, you're gonna see a lot more of me in the next couple of weeks because I have a lot of end of year videos to get out. For this haul, I think the oldest book in the haul is from like the very beginning of October, maybe even the end of September, to be perfectly honest. And then the most recent one is from over the weekend. I also have a nice variety here. We have, of course, the sci-fi and fantasy, but I also have some horror, and I also have one romantasy book. And if that's not shocking enough, just wait till you see which one it actually is. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you've been reading some good books recently, and let's get into it. Let's kick things off with The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. This was my most anticipated book for the second half of 2023. I am so happy to finally have my hands on this book. I've read the synopsis, but I didn't even need to because I just know that I'm gonna love this book. Tananarive Due is such a phenomenal author. She blends horror and history and familial themes like no other author that I've read, and I just cannot wait to see what she has done with this book. Our main character in this is a 12-year-old boy named Robbie, and he is sent to this reformatory after an incident with a landowner when he was trying to defend his sister. And Robbie is someone who can already see ghosts, but just the longer he's at this school, things just get even more creepy, and it just sounds like things start to really spiral out of control. And also his sister, who he was trying to defend, is on the outside trying to do everything she can to get him out of this school. So this sounds like another fantastic read from Tananarive Due. This is definitely going to be on the TBR for January. Next is a book I cannot wait to read, and that is Cyberpunk 2077, no coincidence. I love Cyberpunk 2077. The game has come so far since its launch. I think it's perfect now. Actually, I think it's a masterpiece. It is so incredible. The game now reflects why we love CD Projekt Red so much. So I am still playing Cyberpunk. I'm still playing the DLC. I just love the entire atmosphere of the game. It's incredible. So this book, no coincidence, it's set in Night City, set in the same universe as the game, but like, you know, with other video game inspired stories, it's a book that can actually stand on its own fine. The story is independent of the game, but it's gonna be one of those things where you'll have more of an appreciation for it, I think, if you have played Cyberpunk 2077 or have some familiarity with Cyberpunk. I just think this sounds amazing. We have a group of characters we're following, and the 4 of them were blackmailed into pulling off a heist. It just sounds like it gets out of control following the actual heist. So I can't wait to get into this. I think this is just going to be a really fun time. Next, I picked up Locklands by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the 3rd and final book in the Founders trilogy. I read Foundry Side earlier this year, and I really enjoyed it. I had an amazing time with Foundry Side. I think my only thing that's keeping me from saying that I love Foundry Side and that it's just incredible is that I didn't really get on with all of the side characters, but just in terms of our main character, Sanchia, and there is one side character who I really did enjoy over the course of the book. But just aside from those two and Sanchia's companion, I wasn't really caring about a lot of the side characters, but that is something that I'm hoping will change as I get into book 2 and then, you know, finally get into the 3rd book. Shortfall book 2 is going to be a priority for me going into 2024, and then just have the 3rd book on hand and ready to go. But if you guys are unfamiliar, Foundry Side, it is such a great read. It is one of the most unique magic systems I've read. I really loved how the world building unfolded in Foundry Side, and just even in terms of the magic system that I mentioned, Robert Jackson Bennett, he's pulling in so many different elements of like science and philosophy. It just gets so fascinating the more that you keep reading and the more that the magic unfolds. I think it's a great read. I can't wait to see how I get on with the rest of the trilogy. But yeah, Locklands is on the shelf and ready to go when I finish Shortfall. Then I picked up The Cage of Dark Hours by Marina Lostetter. This is the sequel to The Helm of Midnight, which is a book you are going to be seeing again very, very soon. The Helm of Midnight was fantastic. So this is a highly anticipated sequel for me. I loved everything about The Helm of Midnight. I loved how dark it was. It blends elements of mystery and fantasy and horror and crime. It was so good, and the plot and the structure of the story itself was just so layered. I thought it was perfect. So more on The Helm of Midnight later, but yeah, The Cage of Dark Hours, I'm excited for this. Just based on the synopsis on the inside flap, I can't really tell how much time has passed between book 1 and 2. But I don't care. I'm along for the ride, and I really hope this is going to be just as amazing, if not better, than The Helm of Midnight. I cannot wait to read this. Next, I picked up Bonesmith by Nicki Preto, and I picked up this book because of Elle from Elliot Brooks. She has been raving about this book. Her enthusiasm and her love for it has just made me so curious to see what all the fuss is about. I came across it in the bookstore and I just could not pass it up. So it does sound really interesting, though. This is a YA fantasy. It sounds like the setup for this world is there are like undead that are walking around, and we have these warriors who are actually trained to fight them. And our main character here, she's a bonesmith, but she's training to become one of these warriors. But during her attempt to become a warrior that fights these undead beings, she's sabotaged and she is sent out to, I think it's the border wall that it's called. Yeah, the border wall, which is kind of like the last line of defense between the undead that roam outside and the people. So it does sound fascinating. Sounds like it's going to be a really entertaining read. I will be getting to this in the new year and can't wait to see what I think of it. And then next I picked up Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, and this cover, it's doing a lot on camera, just between the light and the camera. I'm sorry if this is hurting your eyes, my bad. So this is Cassandra Clare's first adult novel, adult fantasy, and I'm actually really looking forward to this. I have high hopes for this. Many years ago, I tried to get into the Mortal Instruments series and I picked up book 1. I forgot the name of the first book, but I picked it up and I did not make it very far in that book before I ended up DNFing it. And I thought it was going to be like a temporary DNF at the time, but I just never went back to it. And now all these years later, that world has just expanded beyond what I could have even imagined, and I just never see myself going back and revisiting like Mortal Instruments and The Last Hours, and I'm just naming random books that I know from the series, but I don't see myself going back to those books. But I do have high hopes again for this first adult novel. It actually sounds pretty interesting. We have a character named Kel, and he's an orphan, and he is trained as a sword catcher, which is the body double for the royal heir. And we have another character we're going to be following, and then there's a failed assassination attempt, and it all just sounds like a lot. So yeah, this was on my radar and it officially caught my eye, so I will be getting to this sometime in the new year. And then I picked up a book I have been eyeing for so long now, and that is The Unbroken by C.O. Clarke, and this is the first book in the Magic of the Lost series. I don't know if this is going to be a full series or if it's a trilogy. I do know one of the more recent books just came out, I think this year. It's described as a military fantasy. We have two characters it sounds like we're following. One is a soldier, one is a turncoat. And this is a fantasy novel that sounds like it's going to be blending elements of uprising and war and politics and espionage into something really fascinating. I have high hopes for it and I really hope I like this. Then recently I was in Paris and I picked up 2 books from Shakespeare and Company. The first was Vengeful by VE Schwab. This is the sequel to Vicious. I read Vicious so long ago. I think I read Vicious around the time the book actually came out, and I love Vicious so much. Of all the VE Schwab I've read so far, I would put Addie LaRue at the top, and then I would put Vicious like right beneath that. I love Vicious. So I do remember when this sequel was announced, and then when it came out, I was thinking, why do we need a sequel to Vicious? Like, the book was perfect. It stood on its own perfectly fine. I don't understand. And I was like, I'm never gonna read Vengeful. And now here we are, and I kind of want to read Vengeful. So I'm just really hoping that I get on with this book. At best, I will love it as much, if not more, than Vicious. And at worst, it'll just be a very unnecessary sequel. And then the last book I picked up from Shakespeare and Company was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, and this is a book I've actually already finished, and I did enjoy this overall. I thought it was a solid read, but I do think it's going to be a while before I ever pick up the sequel. If you guys have read Stephanie Garber, you will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. I've read the Caraval trilogy. Stephanie Garber loves her fairy tales, and it is very clear in her books that she loves fairy tales. Like, her prose is just so whimsical and magical and sweet sometimes. And in Once Upon a Broken Heart, the story itself is good, but I do feel like sometimes the prose was just a little bit too much for me at times. Like, I would just be reading sentences and thinking, that's kind of nauseating. I wish I could find a specific example to share with you, so this is not real at all, but her prose will say things like, today Evangeline just felt like summer storms and heartbreak. And you're like, what? Like I said, I've read the Caraval trilogy, so I'm used to that. I know that that's Stephanie Garber's style, that's her thing. But in this one, I was like, we need to just dial it back a little bit. But overall, it was solid. I liked our 2 main characters. And even though you can read this without reading the Caraval trilogy, I actually would not recommend you do that. You will definitely understand what's going on. But if you want like kind of the more Easter eggy things, you would probably have to read Caraval first. But yeah, this was solid. Next, I picked up another book that I also recently finished, and that is The Jinn-Bot of Shantiport by Samit Basu. And I really enjoyed this. I don't think this book is, actually I know this book is not going to work for everybody. This is just, it's odd, it's strange, but this really worked for me. This has been described as being similar to Aladdin, taking inspiration from that story, and I can definitely see that playing out over the course of this book. But in this we have the city of Shantiport. It's kind of like this backwater place, and one of our main characters is the daughter of failed rebels, and Shantiport itself though serves as like a gateway to the stars. But I just found the culture and the politics of this world to be really fascinating. The characters I think you might have a bit of an issue getting attached to because the story is being told from a bot, and the bot like doesn't know these characters that well, and it's just kind of following them around. So I do say that the way that the story is told is unique because of that. But overall, I really got on with this, and there was even humor in it that worked for me. So who am I? But yeah, this was enjoyable, and it does make me want to go back and read more from this author. And then these last four I'm going to go through pretty quickly. The next book I picked up was Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. This sounds really interesting. Just to quote the blurb here, it says, "This is a thrillingly told queer space opera about the wreckage of war, the family you find, and who you must become when every choice is stripped from you." And we have our main character in this who has just been waiting for the day where she can avenge the murder of planet Earth. And that alone just makes it sound like this book is going to be really intense. So it sounds like it's going to be a cross maybe between like military, sci-fi, a little bit of space opera thrown in there. Then I picked up a newer fantasy. This is Gods of the Wyrdwood by R.J. Barker, and this is the author of the Ty Child trilogy. Book one was The Bone Ships, and this is book one of a brand new series. This is a forest fantasy, and our main character we're following is a forester, and he is just very familiar navigating these dark and dangerous forests. And in the book we also have this world where land can be won and lost for the gods. This one caught my eye just browsing around the bookstore. It sounds really intriguing. We'll see. And this next book, this is the one I think is the oldest one from the haul. I got this book I think like end of September, early October, and that is A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. And this is actually the first book in the Age of Madness trilogy. One of my goals, I'm not making like big goals for 2024 because that kind of kicked me in the butt this year, but one of my goals for the new year is to wrap up the first Law trilogy. I really enjoyed book one, and once I finish that, I do want to go into the second trilogy. But actually, before I get into A Little Hatred, I think I might check out one of the standalones. That might be the correct order to go in, or maybe you can go in any order. I'm not sure, but maybe I'll go to like Best Served Cold first. But I do have this on hand ready to go when the first Law trilogy wraps up. And then last but not least, let's talk about the romantasy that I picked up. I'm actually really excited about this. Like, who am I? But this is Throne of the Fallen by Kerri Maniscalco. And this caught my eye during the Goodreads Choice Awards in the romantasy category. The cover caught my eye immediately. I was like, that looks kind of cool. And even just looking through that category, Kerri Maniscalco's name just kind of popped out at me because I knew that she wrote the, what is it? The Kingdom of the Wicked books. I have not read those books and I don't plan to. And I know that Throne of the Fallen is technically a spinoff of those books, but this actually can stand on its own perfectly fine, and I'm really counting on that because I'm not going back to that series. In this, we are following two main characters. One of them is the Prince of Envy, and then we also have another character, Camilla, who I don't think she's a princess. I think she's just Camilla. It looks like we're just going to be watching their romance slowly build and unfold and grow, and I think I might be in the mood for this sometime in 2024. We'll see how this goes. It's actually very exciting. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these books or if you've picked up any new books recently. I would love to hear about it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.